Topic: Content. What if you spent 30 years fighting a war that had already ended, a war forgotten by time, yet somehow alive in your mind, a constant, relentless reality? This is the true story of Hiroo Onoda, a Japanese soldier whose unwavering loyalty, unbreakable will, and isolation from the modern world turned him into both a legend and a profound enigma. When Japan surrendered at the close of World War II, the fighting stopped for most, but not for Onoda. Deep within the dense jungles of the Philippines, he refused to believe the conflict had ended. Instead, he lived in the shadows, clinging to the orders of his commanding officer with a kind of resolve that defied logic for 29 years. To understand how such a story could unfold, we must go back to the war that consumed the world and to the man who could not let it go. Hiroo Onoda was born in 1922 in Japan. As he grew up, honor, discipline, and loyalty to country became woven into the fabric of his identity. In 1944, near the waning days of World War II, Onoda was deployed to Lubang Island, a small remote patch of land in the Philippines. As an Imperial Japanese Army intelligence officer, Onoda's mission was clear and absolute: sabotage enemy supplies, conduct guerrilla warfare, and most importantly, never surrender. His commanding officer emphasized that he was to remain loyal to these orders above all else, even if it meant complete isolation. No one could have imagined just how far Onoda would take those words. In September 1945, World War II came to an end. Japan formally surrendered, cities began rebuilding, and soldiers returned home. Peace spread across the weary globe. But somewhere hidden in the tangled wilderness of Lubang, Onoda retreated with a small group of men. They had heard whispers that the war was over, by radio, through messenger leaflets dropped from planes. But to Onoda, these were nothing more than tricks from a cunning enemy. He recalled the instructions from his commanding officer: "The enemy will never stop trying to deceive you." And so, doubts lingered in his mind as he watched villagers resume their lives and tried to study the strange, eerie silence of the jungle. He refused to believe that the fighting had ceased. As time dragged on, what began as an impulsive misunderstanding hardened into an unshakable conviction. For months, then years, Onoda and his men survived off the land. They hunted wild animals, foraged for plants, and stole rice from the local villagers, who quickly grew wary of their unwelcome guests. Soon, Onoda came to regard anyone not wearing the Imperial Japanese uniform as a potential enemy. Villagers who approached were seen as spies, and peaceful farmers became, in Onoda's eyes, threats. He conducted nighttime raids, burned crops, and even engaged in violent skirmishes. To him, this wasn't survival. It was still war, and every action was a crucial step in fighting for his country's honor. Leaflets dropped periodically by planes declared that the war was over. Onoda didn't believe them. Stray photographs depicting peace didn't move him. To him, each effort to lure him out was nothing more than an elaborate ruse. As the years passed, his disbelief became his reality. By the 1950s, Onoda's small unit began to dwindle. Some of the soldiers surrendered, unable to endure the isolation. Others died in clashes with Filipino locals. By the time the 1960s arrived, Onoda was completely alone, but his mission hadn't changed. Clinging to his rifle and wearing his now tattered military uniform, he moved undetected beneath Lubang's canopy of trees. For over 2 decades, Onoda managed to elude every rescue mission. Each time planes or teams approached him, he assumed they were the enemy. His distrust grew so severe that even attempts made by other Japanese civilians were dismissed as traps. The outside world had moved on. Cities were thriving, television was spreading globally, and a new generation of people knew nothing of the pain of war. But Hiroo Onoda remained frozen in time, a ghost living among the ferns and the shadows of the jungle. In the 1970s, strange rumors began to surface. Local villagers claimed that the Phantom of the Jungle still roamed Lubang Island. Eyewitness accounts described a man who sometimes broke into homes, scaring livestock or raiding granaries by night. These tales puzzled historians and intrigued adventurers. The truth of Hiroo Onoda's story was rediscovered not by the military, but by a curious young Japanese man named Norio Suzuki. Suzuki was an adventurer with an insatiable thirst for uncovering mysteries. He had heard of the so-called lost soldier still living in the jungles, and in 1974 he embarked on a quest to meet him. When Suzuki encountered Onoda, the soldier was weary but ever watchful. Suzuki didn't approach with force or suspicion. He greeted Onoda with kindness and spoke to him with quiet reverence. It was this human connection that sparked a shred of trust in Onoda's mind. Still, after nearly 30 years in hiding, Onoda remained adamant. No one but his commanding officer could officially relieve him of his duty. Suzuki returned to Japan with Onoda's story, reigniting public interest in the legend of the soldier who refused to surrender. Major Yoshimi Taniguchi, the very officer who had given Onoda his orders all those years ago, was located. Though he had long since retired, Taniguchi agreed to personally travel to Lubang Island to meet the loyal soldier. In early 1974, the climactic moment arrived. Onoda stood before Major Taniguchi, his rifle in hand, and heard the words he had long awaited. "You are officially relieved of duty." Onoda, overwhelmed and emotional, formally surrendered to the Philippine authorities. He turned over his well-maintained rifle, ammunition, and still functional gear. It was as though time had stopped for him. He emerged from the jungle as the same soldier he had been in 1944. Onoda's return to Japan made global headlines. The world was both astonished and perplexed by his extraordinary story. To some, he was a hero, an unwavering symbol of loyalty and resilience. To others, he was a tragic figure, a man trapped by his own unyielding belief in an outdated mission. Still, Onoda expressed no regret for his actions. He simply followed his orders, as any soldier would. While praised for his discipline, Onoda also faced backlash for the damage he caused to Filipino communities. Villagers recounted the years of fear and hardship they endured from Onoda's raids and clashes. In a spirit of reconciliation, Onoda issued a formal apology to the people of Lubang and later donated funds to support local development. Though a national figure in Japan, Onoda struggled to adjust to modern society. The bustling streets of Tokyo, the flicker of television screens, and the changes in culture left him adrift. After years of being faithful to his mission, he feared he had no place in this new world of peace. Seeking solitude, Hiroo Onoda moved to Brazil, where he lived quietly as a cattle rancher. Yet he could not avoid his fame. His story inspired books, documentaries, and endless debate over loyalty, obsession, and the human will to survive. Hiroo Onoda's story endures as one of history's most remarkable tales of commitment and resilience. Was he a hero? A fanatic? Perhaps both. His life stands as a profound reminder of the power of belief and the cost of holding on to the past too tightly. Even in his final years, Onoda reflected on his time in the jungle without regret. When he passed away in 2014 at the age of 91, the world remembered him as more than just a soldier. His extraordinary story continues to captivate, bridging the gap between history and legend. As we remember Hiroo Onoda, one question lingers in the air. What would you have done in his place? Would you surrender to the truth of a new world, or would you fight relentlessly for what you believed, no matter how much the world had changed around you?